Remember that they're changing the sound of my voice because Americans are shallow. They like to try to enslave people. That's what we see here, right? I'm born in America and I'm not like them, but generally that's what we see here. A bunch of people who are psychopaths and people who are broken and people who are clowns and gays in their atheistic culture and other cultures where they're lashing out. A bunch of fake Christians everywhere, and everyone knows it. So they try to make it so I sound a certain way, like I sound sad or something, or this. I'm not sad. I'm a bit confused at moments because they're fuming me and poisoning me and experimenting on me and hacking my brain. And I know that some people are dumb enough to think that, at least historically, some people would have been dumb enough to think that that's not going to be true or something, but it's clear that these days people know I'm right. The black ops that are taking place are so extreme that even in the streets they often refer to their enemies as ops, and not just because they're opposition, but because they're so in bed with the CIA and so on and so forth. You can tell by how they dress, what they're driving. The game, so to speak, is taking on new forms. So when we look at Matthew 18, verses 6 through 9, right, things that cause you to stumble, and we consider how the spirit is everything and the flesh means nothing. And we look at this case here and we see them constantly persecuting me, constantly fuming me, constantly trying to mock God, and there's no hope after my flesh dies, right? I've said that many times. The types of people who do this are certain types of people from various groups, right, who are kind of fucked in the head. It's kind of like the movie The Purge. But here, on this planet, especially in California, I see kind of Jews with a certain disoriented look, certain occult look, drive by all the time, and they gesture at me and stuff like this. I see whites who do the same thing. Often they're in trucks, but sometimes they're liberal, sometimes they're this, sometimes they're that. I see LGBT people quite often. They try to tell me that the Jews are the main people doing. They say, oh, you should blame, just the Jews and all this stuff, right? But they're working together. And there's people who wear suits who try to look a certain way. And I go over this quite often because this comes up quite often. And so I'm also putting them in their place when I explain it this way. That I'm not afraid of them. I'm going to do what I've got to do. So in that section in Matthew 18, it says, if your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out. Your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. Things of this nature. Now, what if you're in a world where there's no way to be righteous? What should you do? Over the years, the persecution of Christians evolved. It evolved from people being snatched up, in popular culture at least. I mean, the Christian story is superimposed on the story of the righteous in general. Okay, so it's evolved from people persecuting people a certain way to people hacking their brains and gang stalking them. That seems to be their favorite method of persecution, though I don't know exactly how many people are gang stalked. I do know that hundreds of people have claimed to be gang stalked over the years. Hundreds of people that I've come across, that is. And people claim to be gang stalked in countries all over the world. Now, they seem to break down into two camps, the people doing this. One, they seem to be pushing for suicide. Two, they're people who are saying, oh, don't do that. And I think that they don't really care which way the target goes. They don't care if the person kills themselves. They don't care if the person assimilates, because there's some kind of cold-blooded animals. And quite often when people move to a cold place, and they live there for thousands of years or hundreds of years or whatever, they become kind of cold-blooded people. We see it with the difference between people in New York and the rappers there, Nas and Jay-Z, versus the West Coast, right? So imagine people have been living there for thousands of years, right? And there's certain token minorities that think like them. And so as we look at the situation, what is happening here? What is happening here is these people don't have any love in their heart. Regardless of what race you are, if you take on a certain mentality and cultivate it, if you let your environment make you a certain way, then you don't have love in your heart. They don't love God, they don't love me, they don't love their kids. And there's no sign that they're going to change course. There's no sign that they're going to wisen up. They've been targeting me for years and years and years and years and years. And they're trying to, kind of increase it over time, try to make me poorer, make me colder, make it so I'm in a more remote place. They're trying to set the stage for these sorts of things. So tough decisions have to be made. And they have to be made for all of humanity, without any emotions, just principle. So when people are being persecuted, they should ask themselves, what does the principle say in this situation? You have to make a call based on principle. And they'll make false promises. They'll do all kinds of stuff trying to confuse you. In this case, they put a special emphasis on them trying to say, hey, them trying to weigh in, right? So I'm going to do what I'm going to do based on what I think is right. And they try to throw that off by saying, oh, you should, kill yourself. And other times they say, well, your families would be sad. And they do stuff like this, right? Why they're hacking me and they're filming me. And there's a bunch of government types, military types with a kind of RoboCop face, right? Kind of Batman face, kind of psychopath, no emotions, no empathy. And some of them feel, there's a spectrum. That's like the military. Some are more goofy. Some of them feel this way. Some feel that way. But all of them have committed to the ruthless military-industrial complex process, right? The corporate process, the cult process, the Freemasonic process, that monster process that we all see, that uniformity, when people in uniforms and otherwise, that uniformity they have where they're screening out people. They're purging people and they're making it a more evil world. And it's a Judeo-Christian culture because it centers around Isaiah 57. The righteous are taken away to be spared from evil, right? Tupac and all these people said the good die young. And it's this recurring theme we see in different cultures. In rock and roll and heavy metal, they're lashing out because they know that's what's going on, and so on and so forth. So when a decision has to be made, you have to make it based on principle. What is the morally precise thing to do here? That's what it boils down to. Not emotions, not letting yourself slip into a state of mental illness or this. You got to think very clearly. What is the right thing to do? If you're a woman, what should a man do for a man, and what should a woman do for a woman, right? And you have to make that call. That's part of why it's bad to be gender neutral. I'm not gender neutral. It's bad to be because you confuse yourself about who you are and what to do. A huge part of their mass mind control game is confusing people about who they are and what to do.